Good evening, everyone. We are coming on the air with major developments involving former President Trump and Georgia's investigation into Trump, his allies, and their alleged attempts to overturn that state's 2020 presidential election results. We know that the grand jury in Fulton County, Georgia, handed up an indictment against Donald Trump. A couple of hours ago, the clerk, you can see it, taking it from the judge back to the clerk's office, where it now has been entered into the system. We do know that this indictment handed up by Fulton County has charged Donald Trump and 18 other individuals for their alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 election results in the state of Georgia. Again, you're aware of the other criminal indictments we've been reporting on. Two of them are at the federal level. The special counsel, of course, is Jack Smith. This is a very different case. Again, this involves Donald Trump and 18 other individuals at the state level for allegedly trying to overturn the results in that election that Joe Biden had won in the state of Georgia. Now, in this case, it's not a special counsel. It's the DA, Fani Willis, who presented her case to the grand jury all day today, more quickly than expected, calling in witnesses earlier than expected as well. Trump today firing off a string of attacks on social media against that DA. Trump also taking aim at Georgia's former lieutenant governor, a conservative Republican in that state, Jeff Duncan, who was just one of the witnesses. Trump saying Duncan should not testify before the grand jury, went ahead and testified anyway. As I pointed out a moment ago, for Donald Trump, this is now his fourth criminal indictment, including two federal cases brought by the special counsel Jack Smith, and here in New York, the 34-count indictment brought by the Manhattan DA for allegedly falsifying business records. Today's indictment comes after a 2.5-year investigation. Let's dive right into the names here. I've got the team here: Pierre Thomas, John Carl, Rachel Scott, all with me here at the desk. Donald Trump listed first in this indictment that I'm looking at, just crossing now. Right underneath are some of the names that you'll be very familiar with at home. Rudy Giuliani facing a number of counts. John Charles Eastman, Mark Randall Meadows. Mark Meadows, of course, the former chief of staff, and of course, in that role during that key time period leading up to the election, straight after the election, up to, of course, January 6th, the certification of that election in Washington. Kenneth Chesbrough, Jeffrey Bossert Clark, Jenna Ellis, Ray Stallings Smith, Robert David Cheeley, Michael Roman, David James Schaefer, Sean Micah Thresher Still, I should say, Stephen Cliffgard Lee, Harrison William Prescott Floyd, Trevian Cootie, Sidney Catherine Powell, of course, Sidney Powell, one of the attorneys who came before the cameras and the American people with her theories on why the election was not Joe Biden's, that had been a victory for him, though all of her theories had been shot down, not just by the other campaign or the other side, but by courtrooms across this country. Kathleen Alston Latham, Scott Graham Hall, Misty Hampton, also known as Emily Misty Hayes, they say in this indictment. Now, a lot of these names are household names, but John Carl, some of these names are not known, and I would guess some of them are these so-called fake electors.
There are at least two fake electors that I see immediately off this. David Schaefer, who was also the head of the Republican Party in Georgia. Also Sean Still. But what's significant here, David, we're at our fourth Trump indictment. But this is the first one that takes Trump and the people that were with him trying to overturn the election. And these are the biggest names. These are the people that were helping him lead the effort. Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, Mark Meadows, his chief of staff, John Eastman, who wrote the whole strategy of trying to get Mike Pence to overturn the election, but was also very involved in the effort to get fake electors from the states Trump was contesting. Kenneth Chesbrough was the lawyer who came up with that strategy specifically of saying we can go as long as we get our electors voted on in the state house. They did it secretly in the state house in some cases, including in Georgia, but they did this in 7 different states. So this is a broad, sweeping indictment. In some ways, even though it deals with just one state, more sweeping than the election interference case that we saw Jack Smith take on. And one other point about Georgia, David, you know, Trump was really contesting 7 states, if you include New Mexico, that he lost to Joe Biden. But Georgia was the state that was closest of all of them. And it was a state in the Deep South. It was the defeat that hurt Trump the most. More than any of these states, It was the state that he was obsessed with and obsessed with getting his defeat overturned.
And again, this is a speaking indictment, if you will. We've talked a lot about this on the air. I know, Pierre, you're ready to jump in. I just want to read for viewers at home what it says on page 14, which is essentially the first key page after the counts are listed in this indictment. It says, defendant Donald John Trump lost the United States presidential election held on November 3rd, 2020. One of the states he lost was Georgia. Trump and the other defendants charged in this indictment refused to accept that Trump lost, and they knowingly and willfully joined a conspiracy to unlawfully change the outcome of the election in favor of Trump. That conspiracy contained a common plan and purpose. That's key there. It contained a common plan and purpose shared by these people. That's the allegation here from Fani Willis, to commit 2 or more acts of racketeering activity in Fulton County, Georgia, elsewhere in the state of Georgia, and in other states, Pierre.
David, extraordinary. You have a local prosecutor using racketeering laws, which are typically used to fight against mobsters and drug lords. And she's basically saying that these people engaged in a plan, knowing that they lost, to basically circumvent the will of the people. And there are specific acts that are being laid out in this indictment. Number one, that this call to the Secretary of State, Brad Raffensperger, in which Trump is asking for 11,780 votes, that was an attempt to basically corrupt an official in the state government. Also, the notion that they were using the fake electors was fraud. So she's saying that there were a group of people led by Donald Trump, he's at the center of it, who engaged in a conspiracy, again, to subvert the will of the people. It's just a stunning case here. We've seen this so many different times before, David, but each case, this is a case study of a local prosecutor saying local laws were broken in the commission of this conspiracy.
She's well known in that community, the first woman to hold this role. She essentially beat her boss to become district attorney in Fulton County. She's known one of the cases she took on was against the school system in that area for cheating, and she prosecuted it in some ways that are quite similar to this, alleging a conspiracy. I want to read from page 15 here. This criminal organization constituted an enterprise, a term that is defined, and she talks about the legal statute that defines this. A group of individuals associated. The defendants and other members and associates of the enterprise had connections and relationships with one another and with the enterprise. And goes on to write, the enterprise constituted an ongoing organization whose members and associates functioned as a continuing unit for a common purpose. Let's get right to Erin Katursky, our senior investigative reporter outside the courthouse. And Erin, again, the fact that she's using the state statute here, we know there's one at the federal level as well, but she's turned to the state law that they essentially use to prosecute, mob bosses and criminal organizations.
And in the state of Georgia, the racketeering statute is often used to do other things, to bring these kinds of sweeping cases. It gives prosecutors a little more leeway, David, to bring in evidence, not just from Fulton County, but perhaps from elsewhere in the state. And I took note that one of the people charged here, Misty Hamilton, is the former election supervisor in Coffee County, where there was a supposed breach of election machines. That clearly has constituted some of this criminal conspiracy that's being alleged now. But to see right plainly on page 15, as you point out, that former President Trump, Rudy Giuliani, John Eastman, Ken Chesborough, and others constituted a criminal organization, the prosecutor said, whose members and associates engaged in various related criminal activities. And she goes on to list them. False statements and writings, impersonating a public officer, forgery, filing false documents, influencing witnesses, computer theft, computer trespass. This does read like a criminal organization doing something perhaps for profit. But here, the prosecutor, Fani Willis, who we're going to hear from shortly, says the motive was to keep Trump in power unlawfully. David, this indictment was handed up some 12 hours after prosecutors began presenting their case to a grand jury. After dark, after hours, the judge kept his courtroom open, told everybody to hang in there because he was doing the same. They moved very fast, calling witnesses today, calling in some who were supposed to testify later in the week so that they could be on notice and ready. They clearly wanted to get this done, David.
Aaron Gatursky just outside the courthouse. Aaron, thank you.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.